Danger Devil What Ifs here, and I'm gonna be starting my very first what if. And this what if is what if Deku had an half and half quirk? So let's start at the beginning of Izuku's life. So we see a young Inko Midoriya lying on a hospital bed, waiting to receive her baby after just delivering him. As the doctor's walking with a pale looking kid and hands him over to Inko, as she feels the kid and he feels ice cold as she looks up to the doctor and asks, is he healthy? As the doctor says, he's perfectly healthy. It's just that his quirk is adjusting his body so that when it fully manifests, he'll be able to use it at its full capacity. As she nods in understanding, as she looks down at the baby, as the baby looks at her with crystal blue eyes, as she smiles, as the baby starts to giggle, as the water in a cup was splashing around. As the doctors thought, how weird. So, right now, we skip to when Deku is 3 years old. So let me tell you about how Deku's attitude is. He's calm, cold to people which he doesn't know. He's like a sunshine when to people who he doesn't know and people he likes. But he normally doesn't like people. Only the people which he's known for a long time he does like. Like his mom, he's always happy around her. So let's go back to when he's 3. So when he's 3, we see him going with his mom as she's walking to her friend's house. She says, okay, be good to Miski's son, okay? Maybe you can be friends with him. As he nods in understanding, as she rings the doorbell, as Miski opens it up and says, hey Inko, how have you been? As she says, fine, I brought my little Izuku here so he can play with little Kaski. And she says, good idea. As the two adults leave the babies to play alone with each other. As at first, Izuku wasn't really social with Bakugo. But then after a while, him and Bakugo began to play with each other. And he became a little bit social with him. But wasn't really so close as to call him a friend. So now we skip to the very first day of preschool. Okay, so you see all the kids in class with the teacher saying, okay, we still have one more child in this class before we can actually start the class. As the kids all nod as they hear a knock on the door. As the teacher says, come in. As they see a younger looking version, a 4-year-old version of the picture which you see right here walk in, as all the girls are thinking in their minds, he looks so cute, is what they say. And look at those crystal blue eyes of his, they're so beautiful. As they all think this, as the boys look at him and see how cool he looks, as they all think, dang, I want to be friends with that guy. As he walks up to the front next to the teacher and asks if he can introduce himself so that they can get over with this. As the teacher says, you can. As he says, name, Izuku Midoriya. Hobbies, reading, learning. Not really a fan of playing around. Quirk, haven't manifested one yet. As he bows to the teacher and says, thank you for letting me introduce myself. As he goes to an empty table, as he takes out a book and starts to read, as all the kids look at him as the way he was doing things, as the girls think, he's so cute and he has manners too. As they all think this, and the guys are thinking, dang, dude, He was so cool right now. So, right now, we're going to skip a few months after he started preschool, about 5 months to be exact. As Deku was walking to the park right after a school day, as he goes to the park, hops on a bench, and starts to read. After about like 10 minutes, he hears a voice, and this voice says to this girl, "Hey, what's a girl like you with that ugly scar on her face doing here? You know you're not supposed to play around this place here. Go away. No one wants to see a monster like you." And she says, but everyone's allowed to come here." "No, they're not. I tell you if you can come here and not, and you can't with that ugly face of yours," as he says to her, screaming. And she says, but if you don't want to leave, then I'll just have to explode you. As he starts to run up, as Deku sees this, as he says, Bakugo again. Ever since Bakugo has gotten his quirk, Deku has noticed that he's become awfully cocky and likes to bully people who are weaker than him. Deku hops off the bench, closes his book, and walks over with his eyes closed as he starts to talk. As he says, Bakugo, Bakugo, Bakugo. As Bakugo stops and turns around as he sees Izuku walking up to him, and he says, "You say you want to become the number one hero, and yet here we are, seeing you acting like a bully and a villain too at the same time. I don't even think All Might would have done such a thing when he was younger. Do you? So how do you think you can become the number one hero when you did something wrong that All Might hasn't even done in his whole life? Tell me, Bakugo, do you really believe that you could become a hero with that attitude of yours?" As he stops right in front of the girl, which is laying on the floor. As he opens his eyes, as his crystal blue eyes, which are cold now, look at Bakugo, striking fear into Bakugo, as he says, whatever, nerd. You still even haven't manifested your quirk yet." "Yes, I haven't manifested my quirk yet, but I can still be a hero and stop you from bullying this girl right here. Move out of the way quickly before I hurt you, Izuku." Hurt me? I'd rather get hurt than let any innocent person get hurt. You asked for it. As Bakugo starts to run up, as Deku thinks in his head, should I dodge? No, there's a girl behind me. If I dodge right now, she'll get hurt. Then what can I do? He's thinking, if only I had my quirk. As he's getting angry in his mind, and as he stamps his foot on the ground, as then after that, ice starts to go all over the ground as it traps Bakugo and his lackeys in their places. As he thinks to himself, as Bakugo thinks, why can't I move? Why? As he looks down and sees that there's ice, and looks where it came from, as he sees that it's originated from Deku's right foot. As he looks up and says, "You've been hiding a quirk from me this whole time, Deku." Then Deku thinks to himself, "Deku? What do you mean, Deku? It's a word for you, called which means useless. I was going to use it on you the next time I saw you, but since you have a quirk, I guess that doesn't mean anything right now. Izuku, nerd. So you've been hiding this quirk from me this whole time?" "No. I just manifested my quirk, an ice quirk." As he starts thinking in his mind, getting happy. Then after a while, the ice melts as Bakugo feels that he can move again, and says, "Even if you manifested your quirk, it's still weak." As he starts to run up, "And I'm going to use my quirk to explode you this time." As Deku thinks, no. If only I could make ice chains around his feet and legs as well as his cronies, then they would be not able to move at all. As the water starts to move up, as it chains Bakugo's hands and feet as well as his cronies' feet and hands, as they are pulled to the ground. Deku thinks, wait, isn't it an ice quirk? Or is it an ice quirk? Or is it an ice quirk that allows me to manipulate all forms of ice? As he thinks this and says, no time to think about it right now. I have to worry about Bakugo. As he says, Bakugo, I'm going to give you a warning before I tell Aunt Miski. No, don't tell her. As he says, I won't, as long as you leave the park right now and don't threaten to hurt this girl anymore, then I won't tell Aunt Miski. Oh, fine. As Deku lets go of the water, as Bakugo and his goons stand up, as Bakugo starts to walk and his goons start to walk to the gate. As when they reach the gate, Bakugo turns around and says, you better watch out, nerd, because next time you won't be so lucky, and I'll explode that ice off me and hit you with an explosion for payback. As Bakugo and his goons run out of the park, as Deku lets out a huge sigh, as he turns around and looks at the girl. He bends down and asks her, hey, you okay? As the girl says, yeah, I'm fine. As Deku pulls out his hand and says, you want me to lift you up? She says, thanks. As he lifts her up, as he says, don't listen to that idiot about what he says. As she saw that she had tears, as he took out a handkerchief and wiped the tears off. I think you look beautiful just the way you are, so stop that crying. As he smiles, as the girl splashes a little, as she says, thank you. So, do you think you can go home by yourself, or do you want me to walk you home? She says, no, I don't want to go back to that place. As Deku thinks to himself, that place. As he looks closely at her and sees that she has two colored hair. One side is white and one side is red. As he looks at her face, he thinks, she reminds me of someone. As he thinks in his head, who she reminds him of. As one word comes into his head, as it says, it is Endeavor. As he looks at her and says, hey, is Endeavor your father? And she says, yes. As he remembers how Endeavor acts and says, oh, now I understand why you don't want to go home. Because of your dad, he says. And she says, yes. So, you want to hang around with me for a little while? Up until you get the courage to go back home? And she says, okay. As he holds his hand out, as she holds his hand, and then he says, come on. As he pulls her and she smiles a little as they sit on the bench. And then Deku says, why don't we introduce ourselves? My name is Riku Midoriya. Hobbies, reading, learning. I don't really like to play around much. Quirk, don't really know. And she says, don't really know. Didn't you just use your quirk right now? As he says, yeah, I just manifested it right now. As he says to her, as she says, for someone who just manifested their quirk, you seem awfully adept with it. As Deku says, as he scratches his back of his head, he says, you think so? And she says, yeah. So, what's your name? Deku says, as she says, Shoro Todoroki. And yes, guys, this what if Shoro Todoroki will be a girl. Shoro Todoroki. What's your quirk? Half hot, half cold. Deku thinks for a while. Half hot, half cold. Does that mean you can control ice and fire? Ooh, can you show me both of them? As Deku's eyes glimmer in the sun, as she looks into them and says, too bright. As he says, sorry. As she says, I can show you my eyes, but I'll never show you his quirk. I'll never use his quirk. As Deku thinks to himself, his quirk. Then he remembers what Endeavor's quirk is. Half hot. It's It's called hair flare. Then he says, oh, endeavor. He pushed you too hard or did something that caused you to not want to use your fire side. She says, yes. Then Deku looks at her and says, okay, as he thinks, aha, got it. Then he says, you want to become a hero, right? Yes, a hero that saves everyone from danger, right? And she says, yes. Then Deku says, well, then I suggest you use your fire side. And she says, no, I'll never use this quirk. I'll become a hero with my side, the ice side alone. And Deku says, wait. Hear me out first before you go talking about not using your other side of your power. So think about this right now. Say you do become a hero using your eyesight alone. You will become a hero, but then when you're trying to save people, wouldn't you only be using half of your power fighting a villain off which seems stronger than you, and you refuse to use your fire side? And your eyesight alone cannot do anything. You would be endangering the lives of others just by not acknowledging the other side of you. But it's his fire, not mine. As he says, no. If I remember correctly, Endeavor's quirk is called Hell Flare, right? Or Hellfire, right? As she says, yes. And what's your quirk called again? Have hot, have cold. Yes, there's my point. Huh? She says, you see, his quirk allows him to control fire and produce it, while your quirk allows you to control ice and fire and produce both of them. You see, it's your quirk, not his. As he closes his eyes and smiles at her, as she says, I guess you're right at that. I know it might be hard for you to not want to use it, but think about that for a while, and you'll realize that if you don't use your fire side, you'll be endangering the lives of more people than you're trying to save. She thinks this and says, you're right, but I don't want to show him that I'm using his fire side. Then he says, then don't show him. Just show him that you're using your ice side, but then you actually do train your fire side. Just don't show him that you train it. Show him that you only train your eyes. That way, he can never get the satisfaction which he wants, and you can become stronger and protect people. What do you say about that? And she says, for someone so young, you're really smart. As Deku giggles at that and says, I get that a lot. As they hear a voice, Shoto! As Shoto looks and says, I'm here. As a girl with white hair and red and a couple of red streaks in her hair comes up and says, Shoto, we have to go now. Dad's angry and looking for you everywhere. If he finds you that you're over here, he'll be mad that you skipped out on your training and make it even more worse. And she says, oh, okay. As she turns around while holding her sister's hand and says, thanks again. And thanks for the help and for protecting me. As Deku waves back and says, no problem. Hope we meet each other again. As he says this, she says, hope we meet each other too. As Deku is walking home after all that happening and goes to his mom and says, Mom, I manifested my quirk. She says, huh? You manifested your quirk? What is it? He says, I really don't know if it's an ice quirk, if it's an ice quirk which allows me to manipulate all forms of ice, or is it an ice and water quirk? She says, just wait a few minutes and then we can head out to the quirk doctor after I'm done with doing these dishes. As he says, okay, Mom, see you then. As after a few minutes, she comes out and says, are you ready to go? As he jumps off the couch and says, yeah. As they head in the car, as they're in the hospital right now. As the doctor comes back and says, kid, we have a very powerful quirk right here. Ooh, What is it? What's it called? It's called absolute zero. Absolute zero. What does that do? It allows you to control all forms. Allows you to control all forms of ice, even the ones which fall from the clouds, and water, even some in the body, in the ground, and in the air. So you basically have an unlimited supply of ice and water, able to create it and take it from somewhere. With this quirk, I bet you could become a powerful hero with it. Seku thinks to herself, powerful hero. I can save people. I can become the number one hero, as he asks. So, with this quirk, do you think I can become the number one hero? Kid, as long as you train this quirk to its maximum power, I bet you could become the number one hero. Be able to stop your opponents by controlling the body, by controlling water in their body or freezing them in place. It's a very powerful quirk you got there. As he says, thanks, Doc. As they go home, as Izuku is in his bedroom with a glass of water, as he manipulates the water out and makes it into a snowflake, as he freezes the snowflake and says, huh, absolute zero. I like the sound of that. Okay, everybody, thank you for watching my very first What If. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for everything, and thanks for watching and giving views. Also, like and subscribe if you can. Thanks.